Good evening, you all. Thanks for coming on board here at People for People radio show. This is the Traditions for Peace, where we talk about how to live in this toxic soup that we're living in a healthy way. And I just want to thank everybody there at People for People and encourage you all, if anybody's listening to this online, or you can join the chat room if you like. You can get to know people from all over the world and get a lot of good information just through the chat room too. So that's always fun. And on the website, there's a lot of links you could play around with and find lots of really amazing information that you're not going to find in normal everyday venues for news. All different topics: spiritual, political, good living. So I encourage you to play around with that and come on to board with People for People radio here. And after my show today, I'm pretty sure there's going to be another party. We have music shows usually. A lot of times, I think it's 3 or 4 times a week, we have music shows. And last Sunday we had a really fun show. So stick around after this show for some music. Okay, and today we are going to be covering, a big topic. The topic of autism and autoimmune disease. I don't know about you, but where I live, it's just so heartbreaking to see more and more kids walking around with autism. I mean, when I was in school, I don't remember anybody having autism. And where I work is a pretty small town. It's only like 7,000 people. And I mean, I could safely say that every week I see more and more children with autism. And it's not just due to vaccination. It's also due just to the toxic soup that we're being exposed to. And so we're gonna go through some of those reasons of how this has come about. And also related to that is autoimmune diseases. So we're going to take a look at that. So the autism normally shows up with in the children, and then the autoimmune diseases are showing up in children as well, but also mostly in adults. So they both kind of come from the same place, although, you know, it's difficult to track exactly what happens, but that doesn't really even matter how it happened. In my practice, I just, I'm an acupuncturist. I've been doing that for 20 years, and I've been actually practicing natural medicine and healing for about 35 years. And I haven't done the math there, but I was 12 years old when I first started. So things are just getting more and more difficult to treat. And so that's why I wanted to really focus on this. Been talking about detoxing, and springtime is the best time to be detoxing. So it is a good time to be going over this stuff. There was a couple of questions that I wanted to address right away. And let's see, you want to shoot those to me again, Vanessa, because now I can't see where they are. Oh, wait, here it is. Okay. So one of them was about so we're going to talk about the GAPS diet, and that stands for gut and psychology. So this diet was created by a woman who lives in England, and she, her son was full on autistic, and she was really into natural stuff, and so she was looking for a method to treat him in a natural way. And so, because she didn't want to do all the drugs, he started off being ADD and stuff really bad, so she didn't want to put him on the Ritalin and all those drugs that they generally put kids on if they're having attention issues, which is just that's like the beginning end of the spectrum, right, of the autism spectrum, is the ADD and the attention, problems with attention in school. I mean, that's inherent in the schools themselves too, because, who really wants to pay attention in most of these schools? Sorry, my teacher friends, but they know what I'm talking about. It's so hard for teachers these days. Their hands are tied in a lot of ways, and but it is hard for children to sit through all what they have to sit through. And then on top of that, the food and the vaccines and the all the toxins in our environment, just loading more and more stress onto everybody's system. And so, so let me get to this one little, there we go. The GAPS diet, what it does is it establishes a connection between the state of the gut and the health of the rest of the body, right? And the classic problem that so many of the kids have when they do have autism or attention deficit is that their gut. They have problems with their gut, most of them. In fact, everybody that I've ever seen has gut issues. I actually saw a whole family once, and they were all on different spectrums. There was 4 kids and 2 adults, and they were all on that spectrum, the autism. One of them had Asperger's. The other one was young. He was probably only 6, and he was in there. I don't think he had been diagnosed yet, but there was a full-on autism. There was a Crohn's disease. Yeah, and they moved away, but they started on the diet and mostly just started on the meat stock. And so I didn't really get too far with them, but they really had they felt so much relief right at the beginning from just starting the diet. And I don't know whatever happened with them, but I do have a lot of other case studies that we'll kind of go through a little bit here. And if you have questions, please send them to Vanessa in all caps in the chat room there. And we'll try to get to those. So let's see. So the things that can come, the major problem in a GAPS person, I'm going to just call it GAPS person, right? So we know, for me, I was on this diet for 1.5 years. I had probably IBS. I probably had, I don't know, I had a lot of different things. Maybe I don't go to doctors, so I'm pretty sure if I did, I probably would have had a hysterectomy when I was younger. And, I would have been probably put through the mill. But I just kind of held out and didn't do any of that stuff. But so here's some of the things that cause problems in the body. So we got antibiotics, we got steroids. They're really common. The pill for women, any other kind of drugs, they can all damage gut flora. Stress, poor diet, bad oils, infections, diseases. Bottle feeding actually is really, those soy formulas that they give to kids are so toxic. It's really sad. Old age, of course, you would just get older, and things just don't work as good as they did. So this diet is actually okay for old people. I'm getting on 60 here, so. But I don't see why it can't be used for old people. I've never heard that it can't be. Somebody asked that question earlier. But you would just go really easy on them, probably not put them onto the introduction. We'll talk about the different steps of the diet on down the line here. But, they can certainly get started on the meat stock and, starting eating better, which is just the bottom line. So pollution, radiation, alcohol, toxic chemicals, and dental work. Actually, I sound about 25. Yeah, I actually feel about 25. I feel better now than I ever have in my whole life. And I'm telling the truth there. I really am. I have no pain. My brain's working pretty good. I got a lot of gray hair on my head, but that's about it. But I seriously feel better than I ever have. So the way that the damage happens, you ingest all these things, and over time, it starts to wear away at the lining of the mucous membrane lining of your stomach. It could be the bladder. So some people get cystitis or others. So different people manifest their problems in different places because that's where the toxins have gone. They've settled in different places because everybody has a different constitution and different weaknesses. So the toxins are pretty much going to settle where there's those weaknesses, or they're going to cause the most damage where there's your own weakness. So with the GAPS diet, we focus on finding those weaknesses and and then addressing what's going on with it. But the bottom line is that there's major gut issues. And so I was trying to get a little thing online, a photo, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. Maybe I'll try that for next time. But basically, the lining of your stomach and your whole, from your mouth all the way down through your bottom end, right, is a mucous membrane. And it's a lot different than your skin, right? It's soft, and it's inside of the gut lining. There's these little hairs. There's these really nice puffy little skins, the cells that are on there. They're kind of packed together nicely so that when food goes through your stomach, it goes through the digestive tract, it gets broken down at different stages, and the nutrients that are supposed to go into your bloodstream can pass through really easily in the healthy gut lining, because the healthy cells are kind of plump, and they've got these little hairs on them, and the hairs actually work to move along any toxins or things that are not supposed to be, pieces of food that are too big or something that they don't want. It doesn't want to get into the bloodstream. The body in a healthy gut will just sweep that stuff along, and then it gets broken down further down the line. So it's safe if it's in a state. It's in a state where the blood can accept it in a good way, right? So you don't want to have toxins and big pieces, undigested food getting into your bloodstream. So what happens is that when there's damage to the gut through all those different things I mentioned, is that those cells start to get withered, and they might die, and then there's a little hole, and the hairs kind of fall off. They don't have a lot of hairs. And those hairs actually have enzymes on them, which are the chemical that help break apart chemically your food down into the, amino acids and the different forms that the body can use. So without all those enzymes, and then you got these holes, which they call leaky gut, right? So stuff is getting into your bloodstream that has never in human history ever been in people's bloodstreams these days. So all the new chemicals, all the old chemicals, and just, like we said, food particles, things like that, they start to get into that bloodstream, and the body looks at it and freaks out. And that's where autoimmune disease starts, because it starts reacting to these things in your gut. And so with a damaged gut wall, you got a lack of protection by the beneficial gut flora, right? Because that all the toxins tend to build up, and then you got pathogenic microbes in there and toxins. So when the gut flora starts to get weak, then the pathogenic ones really bloom, right? Because they can just go crazy. And then we got the diet with all the sugar and stuff. So that's just feeding all these pathogenic microbes, right? And it doesn't make for a very good environment for the beneficial ones to stay alive and help you out there. So so it lets these microbes into the bloodstream too. So you got these pathogens in your gut from they call it dysbiosis, right? Where there's that huge out of balance thing where you don't have good probiotics, you got the bad stuff growing. And people are getting bloated. These are the signs of symptoms: bloating, gas, nausea, undigested food, and all different kinds of digestive problems. And usually with autistic kids, you're going to see this. They're going to be really picky eaters, because usually their stomach's hurting all the time, and they have things inside of them that are screaming out to be fed. So it's like an addictive thing that a lot of kids will just eat, carbs. They just want pasta or rice or, stuff like that. Sugar, fruits, we'll talk about that. So then the immune system, when those things start to get into the bloodstream, the immune system reacts by bringing in the autoimmunity, meaning it starts to attack those things because it's not part of the normal, things that come into the bloodstream. So it starts to attack it. I wanted to go over just a typical scenario for a child with either autism or the spectrum of autism. Usually if people are a GAPS person, we call them, then if that child keeps going without getting treated properly, it's probably going to go into some form of autism or learning disability, attention problems, addiction later on. So the typical scenario for a child would usually the mother has some kind of gut dysbiosis. So the mother has some of those issues also. Might not be as pronounced, but she probably has it. And the father could too. So the baby doesn't develop normal gut flora as really young. So the baby's getting the flora from the mom, which is already compromised, right? So, it could end up in ear infections, very common for kids, chest infections, and, resulting in antibiotic use, which is going to further damage the flora there. And then, of course, vaccinations. People have been talking about that. You probably know a lot about that already. So an unusual weaning diet, which means that, they might get put onto soy formula, which is really damaging. And I've talked a lot about soy before, but it's basically an endocrine disruptor, and it messes with the hormones. So, there's, talk about the whole gender thing going on where there's a lot of, we just see more and more men and women with that gender thing going on where they're confused and, want to have sex with their own, own sex, right? Men and women. That's not to say that that's wrong, because it's probably okay, and there's a normal amount of that happens in any culture, I'm sure. But it just seems to have gotten crazy and mushroomed, that whole thing. So that's part of it, is the soy in the diet, and all these toxins and stuff are creating that imbalance in our social lives. So then the gut dysbiosis, it goes hand in hand with that damage to the gut wall. And so, the kid might not want to eat a lot of stuff because it hurts. Because once he eats, if he eats stuff that's, like vegetables a lot, will hurt kids. And that's why they don't want to eat them, because they're raw. A lot of times if they're raw or they're rough, they will actually hurt going through the digestive tract. So there's a reason sometimes when kids don't want to eat vegetables, that's probably why, especially if they have this other stuff going on. You can just take a look at that. So let's see. So then the toxins start to go, they enter into the body, and they also enter into the brain. So that is what causes the gut and psychology syndrome. So that causes all those brain problems, the attention deficit, the comprehension, the speech problems, a lot of times the kids have sort of motor, it's called dyspraxia and dyslexia, right? Where they're kind of clumsy or drop things or walk unusual. That's all part of it, right? Because those toxins are going through the gut-brain barrier into the brain, and they're affecting those different parts of, their brain. So, and so then the typical scenario for an adult is a little bit different, but usually the adult was a GAPS child. So, if this is you could look back at your childhood and see if you had any of those kind of things going on, or anybody in your family or friends, whatever. So usually you had these issues as a child. So antibiotics probably influenced. We all, got shot up with that a lot. I did. Not a lot, fortunately, but I, definitely got it. I think so you got abnormal digestion and absorption of food. And it can lead to, over time, because you got your whole lifespan, right? You're an adult now. over time, this malabsorption and digestive problems has led to multiple nutritional deficiencies. So we just start to feel weaker and weaker over time because we're not digesting our food like our ancestors used to. And so we can't work as hard as they did. We can't think, our brains are not thinking as well. We got brain fog. Our bodies are breaking down. So, and this is all due to the dysbiosis and the damaged gut wall, right, over time. And some people don't actually have major digestive problems because that's not their weak point. For me, that was my weak point, so that was kind of good because I couldn't ignore it. And so you got food allergies as you go along. People get and intolerances, so they just get more and more intolerant to more and more foods. And, I just tell people don't even bother getting tested for food allergies because it costs a lot of money. If you don't have the right kind of insurance, you're going to be paying for that. If you have issues that need to be addressed, then just start doing it because you can spend your money better on food and on the different, things that you're going to need to do to heal. So I'm usually, and I think Dr. Natasha, that's what she doesn't recommend people go to too much testing. I mean, I think if it's a really severe case, then yeah, it's probably good, but, my feeling, that's what I did. That's what I would do is just to spend your money where it's going to really count. Because there's a major problem going on. So the toxins, when they enter the organs, like the liver or the pancreas or the bladder, it's going to cause what she terms as gut and physiology. So that it's starting in the gut and it's going to your physiology, to your physical organs. And so we're kind of go through a few of those there. I wonder if there's been any questions, Vanessa? Early diet now. Okay. There's a woman that says she healed her son. Okay, so let's go here. So with the GAP syndrome for autism, usually it's here's a list of things that are commonly present with autism. So we got the autism itself, that diagnosis, but maybe they're not diagnosed. So we got the ADD, dyslexia, dyspraxia. We talked about that. Learning, behavioral, social problems, and epilepsy or tics or fits, even like outbursts, like emotional outbursts. That can all be part of that. So, don't just think it's the kid that's being a jerk. There's probably a good reason why the kids are acting out like that if they have these common kind of problems. So then in adults, substance abuse is actually directly related to the gut. And that starts off in between, like as a teenager. The kid, if they are a GAPS kid and nobody knows it, they have all these problems and they feel really terrible about themselves because they can't do well in school. They can't develop their gifts. They probably know that there are certain things they want to do, but they just can't do it, and it's not their fault. It's because there's this really physical and psychological stuff going on. And okay, so I have to be really careful here because I'm not going to say it's treatable, but I'm going to try to keep saying that this is what I have seen, and this is what, because I have seen a lot of cases of where these things help, and my experience, okay, because I can't really treat anybody on this show. So I want to encourage people, if you do have severe problems like this, find a practitioner. In fact, you can go to www.gaps.me and look for a practitioner in your area if you're interested. They usually can have a first appointment for free, and it's usually pretty affordable. I just heard a talk yesterday and found out that in the UK, there's a new category of, let's see, this person was a physio. I don't know what that meant, but she said there's a lifestyle medicine personnel practitioner. She was a physio practitioner, maybe. So apparently there's some kind of legislation where that's getting covered, I don't know, through insurances or the government insurance. So you might want to look into that, so to find a practitioner. But I can certainly help, just talk about this stuff and give you information, and any questions, please put them in the chat room. So in the adult, we got the substance abuse and eating disorders. So people, they don't want to eat stuff because, for one thing, it hurts, because they're not digesting it, or they get too much bloating. Depression, coming out of all that, it's a huge part of it. Obsessive compulsive behaviors, manic depressive, schizophrenia even, epilepsy, and tics and fits also. So someone who's on that really, far end, the schizophrenic, I have heard of cases where people get some benefit from this, but they pretty much have to stay on the diet. The food is so delicious that I don't know why, if you can, or if you like to cook, or you can learn to like to cook, there's really no reason to not do it. Because it might be a little bit more expensive, but if you're cutting out stuff that's bothering you and, changing your lifestyle, you save money in different parts of your life and just put it towards your health, right? So most children can be on it for about 1.5 years or 2 years, but that's just most of them, not like severe cases. Sometimes it takes a lot longer, and adults too, 1.5 years to 2 years. Adults tend to take a little bit longer. Let's see here. We got, anybody with colic, like kids with colic, babies with colic, bloating, gas, diarrhea, constipation, feeding difficulties. We talked food allergies, constipation. Oh, yeah, I said that. So what the GAPS diet does is to help to, establish a good amount of gut flora, the proper gut flora. So the gut flora, it protects from pathogens. It's like the first line of protection from pathogens, really. Helps with the digestion and absorption of minerals. It helps with, the flora helps with the vitamin production, detoxing. So if you're trying to, when people have been talking about detoxing in the springtime, it's a good thing to do, but it just doesn't work if you're going to be just going out there and eating crazy and tons of sugar and stuff, and then you go on this really intense detox. Well, yeah, you'll feel like you're detoxing and you'll probably feel better for a while, but really deep down inside, it's not going to do much. It's just going to cost you money, because a lot of those detox kits are not cheap, So that's why I talk a lot about the slow detoxing, and this is the way to do it, because this diet is a natural chelator. It will even take out heavy metals. So we got the whole picture is looking at like this reduced or absent populations of normal flora, right? The good bacteria. And then you get the candida. You hear about that. People have candida overgrowths. And then there's this other one that's even worse. It's called, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but Clostridia. And that is really bad. And that comes in a lot with GAPS people. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit here. So you got viruses, measles, herpes, all that kind of stuff. They can proliferate. People get shingles too, can be part of this whole thing. Let's see. So then the key treatment to the whole treatment of the GAPS diet is actually the actual diet. And then you got some supplementation, because on the diet, especially when you're first starting off, you need to be flushing the system with higher amounts of like probiotics and stuff. So somebody asked earlier about a good product for the probiotic, and basically I recommend one called, it's actually, I think it's from England, but it's called BioCult, BIO-KULT. And that one's a really good one. It doesn't have any kind of weird fillers or stuff in there. I was making notes about the different kinds of fillers that they use in different supplements. And oh my God, so that one called Carrageen or something, Carrageen, what they use that for in the science labs is they give it to the mice to inflame them really bad. So they test different drugs, anti-inflammatory drugs on that. And that stuff is in it's like in so many things. It's in yogurt, it's in all kinds of candy products, but it's in ice creams. So look out for that one, the Carrageen. And I have it written down, but now I can't find it. But I know I've seen that one a lot. So yeah, even the stuff that you think is going to be healthy, because it's in the health food aisle, you should really keep looking at the, actually don't even go into those aisles. On this diet, you're going to cut that stuff out. What I do is I go into people's houses and, well, if they need me to, basically bring some boxes, and we just go in and take everything out of the pantry that is not going to be working for us, and just give it to a food bank or to somebody that needs food or something. Because you don't want to have stuff around that you're going to want to cheat on. But anyhow, so we're looking at the gut and physiology syndrome. So this is for adults, for us, right? Digestive disorders, right? Autoimmunity, which includes things like diabetes and lupus and all kinds of stuff like that, right? We talked, let's see, I think I told you guys about my MS last time. That could be involved too. You got arthritis can be involved. Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, allergies, asthma, neurological problems like chronic headaches. It's a really classic sign from GAPS people. Just means that there's so much inflammation going on because you got all kinds of stuff coming into your bloodstream that's not supposed to be there. Hormonal problems. I remember when I was on the GAPS diet, I think I was going through menopause, and I was having some hot flashes, not too bad, but I remember the day that the diet actually got into that level of me, is my hormonal level. And I mentioned it. I was like, said it out loud. I was like, wow, I feel like it's getting into the hormone level. And I don't know how I felt it. I can't really describe what it felt like, but I just knew that it was affecting that. So that was cool. And then we got like things like chronic cystitis and neuropathy. So those are like nerve problems. The cystitis would be more like in the bladder area, but it could be anywhere, which just means that it's like a really like stinging, hot, burning, like a neuropathy inside of you. Neuropathy, we usually refer to like the hands and feet tingling, that kind of stuff. But so cystitis is like neuropathy inside, and it's very painful. So that could be caused by all this stuff too. And, it's really unfortunate because most doctors don't have any idea. They're like reaching for all these drugs and surgeries and meshes and this and that, and it's just crazy. And it's such a waste of time, and it's so depressing, really. So hard to see people going through all that stuff for no reason. So skin problems is like psoriasis and eczema, right? So it's just more inflammation, right? Coming through the skin. So, so the liver, what happens with the liver is that when there's this gut dysbiosis and the gut damage, that those toxins are coming in from the gut, right? And it blocks the detox pathways. So if you're trying to detox while all this stuff is going on, and it could be to a greater or a lesser degree, you could actually make it worse if you start to just go on some blanket across the board detox without at the same time addressing healing and calming and stop the offending foods. So because if you're still doing that, you might even go on a fast for a few days or a week or a couple weeks, and do the detox. But still, it's going to be such a huge overload for your body to do it like that if you have major stuff going on. That's why a lot of people just don't want to do it, because maybe they've tried and it's too much. It's really excruciating to deal with. I mean, people got all this stuff going on anyway, and then to add that onto it, it's no fun, to be trying to detox from that kind of a condition. So that's what the GAPS diet is really great about, is that it will start to heal the lining. It's healing things, calming everything down, getting you in good habits and stuff. And then the detoxing that we do, it's going to happen all along. But then after you go through the first few months or whatever, then you're going to get in there with more juicing and different things, and we'll talk about that. But it happens after, like, really slowly, right? So so if you try to detox and you got all this junk going on, and then you have the blocked pathways, the toxins bypass the filters and go into the bloodstream, like, even more. So if, as you're detoxing, it could easily block it off, and then even more of these toxins and stuff can go into the bloodstream. So we got stuff like, heavy metals and petrochemicals, glues, agriculture, chemicals, personal care products. I talked about that in the last one. Cleaning products. What is this word? Plasticizers. That's in food, where they make things, they put plastic in it to make it kind of gel up and be a certain consistency. We are just getting bombarded by so much crap. It's ridiculous. So, and no wonder all this stuff is going on. And then just the simple byproducts of one's own metabolism. Just that on itself can be a lot. The liver has it. So normally, in a normal, healthy situation, that's the only thing the liver has to do to clear up. That's its job, is to clear up the byproducts of your body's own metabolism, period. But that poor liver has, like, all this other stuff going on, and it's just getting really overloaded, and everything's suffering in there. So some people, they get affected in their lungs. So a lot of kids get asthma. And I had a lot of experience with asthma when I was in acupuncture school. I actually quit smoking when I was in acupuncture school, and I got asthma after I quit. And so I used to go in and get acupuncture, and it would make me cry. The acupuncture, I would cry. And you find out that the different organs have different emotions that are associated with them. So with that liver, before, we have depression and irritability could be part of the whole thing. So you get the kids that are really toxic, or people, adults too, and you get really irritable because everything's stuck. You're not moving. The chi or the blood, nothing's moving right. The lungs is about grief. So if you do start to clean up and you have these emotions coming up, say you have asthma or you have breathing problems and you're an adult and you start to clean them out, you might have some grief coming up, and it's okay. Just find a way to be with it, let it flow. A lot of times I'll have people get into a shower, or not in my, but just at their home, get into their shower and let themselves cry in the shower, because sometimes there's these emotions that are stuck too with these different illnesses or problems. So, and then the anti-asthma drugs, they actually stop they do damage to the whole system. So they, maybe in a life and death situation, it's probably okay to take them. But, I've seen people on stuff for their whole life, in a long time, and it does major damage to the lungs. So it damages the bronchi, and then these toxic gases, because they're breathing in those inhalers. So she's got all this complicated stuff going on with the lungs. So this is good to look at that too. Oh, so this is interesting. Yeah, the asthma used to be a benign condition. Like before anti-asthma drugs were invented in the 1950s and 60s, there were no asthma deaths. None. And so now it's a deadly disease because of what we just talked about. It's trapping those toxins in the lungs, and then it gets really dangerous. Okay, so something we really want to look at. And there is, there's this, let's see how I word this, because we were just talking, I was listening to this podcast yesterday, and they were talking about the legality of stuff, and I don't have a doctor's degree or a doctor's, license, but I do have a license to practice medicine for acupuncture. So I still have to be really careful how I word stuff, because basically I can't say that I'm treating anything or that I can help you feel better or get better. So anyway, I'm going to just erase. If I said anything like that, I'm erasing it right now. So let's see. So you can even get with the lung problems as it goes on, the food allergies can be fatal because of the lung damage that's happening. So even with like people who think that their asthma is controlled, right, with these drugs, it still gets into that really scary place with it. It can get really, really dangerous. We already talked about this, how the toxins release through the lungs, through the skin, through the urine, and through the mucous membrane. So so the urine, one of the, for kids, bedwetting and thrush, like if people get that chronic sort of, it's like a yeasty thing in the mouth, that's all part of these toxic overloads and problems. That's a urine problem, actually. Chronic bedwetting is part of it. So that can be a sign that something's going on. And then through the mucous membranes is the sinus problems, chronic sinus issues, the vaginitis, the whole digestive system and respiratory system, everything. So it just starts all getting inflamed, right? So part of the problem is not just the toxins in the flora, but the absorption of proteins into the damaged gut walls. And so that's what the immune system really starts to attack with the antibodies, right? It attacks its body's own tissues because there's these proteins that are in your food that don't get digested properly. So then diabetes. So a lot of people get diabetes from this. And diabetes, the type 1 diabetes, the pancreatic cells are attacked. But then in like things like celiac disease and the small intestine is attacked. MS and autism and other neurological problems. The nervous system is attacked. The myelin sheath is attacked. So one of the things that I haven't mentioned too is but I've talked a lot about this in the past, is the fats, right? The low fat diets and the big lies about animal fats, to not, cut the fat off your meat when you're eating it or when you're cooking it, take all the fat out. That is just a big, huge lie. And it's caused tons of problems and things like MS. Or I told a story about me getting diagnosed with MS the last time, and she actually saw the plaquing in my spine, and what that comes from is not enough cholesterol. It's not enough fat, animal fats, good fats, healthy fats. So that is coupled in with all of this, that big lie, right? So causing these different problems with the neurological system. And always with gut and in the GAP situations, or autism, autoimmune, there's way more than one system attacked at one time. So I had this one lady come in with diabetes. She had type 2 diabetes, and she was taking 14 different kinds of medications, including those shots in her eyeballs, like once a month, right direct in the eyeballs. And she was so sick, and so she said twice to me, she said, I don't even want to live anymore. And I told her, look, I'm a mandated reporter. If you say that one more time, I'm going to report you. Because I have to. I've never had to, but anyhow, she was just at her rope's end. She felt so horrible. And it took a long time, it took about 2 years for her to, took 2 years for her to even get on the diet, really. So, because sometimes people are just so entrenched in their, their story or their way of living and stuff that they can't let go. And so even those kind of people, it's okay to work with these kind of people because it just takes more time and they can do it. And then every little step, they go, oh, wow, that did help, and then they might cheat and do something wrong, like, eat a candy bar or something, and they go, oh, God, I don't really want to do that. So, these people who think that they're so entrenched in their physical problems, there still is ways that could be helped, that you can feel better. So, goodness, let's see through my notes here. So the autoimmunity, so Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, diabetes, celiac disease, osteoarthritis, lupus, ALS. Those are all different diseases that have been found to be gut-related. So chronic cystitis for adults. Some people, it's hard to for the doctors to diagnose that because a lot of times they just miss it or something. It's hard to. But basically, the symptoms are, what happens is that the eliminations of toxins is coming out the urine, and it's making everything inflamed down there, right? So the abnormal flora, they might have chronic yeast infections or, other kinds of things down there. Bedwetting, urination problems, bladder infections. So the GAPS program will remove the toxins from the urine and populate that whole area with probiotics. So that's what it does with each of the systems. It just goes in because as you start eating the right foods and healing up stuff, it's just gonna go right to where the weakness is, right? So let me just see here. Oops, there was a question there. Where is that? Oh, okay. So we got about somebody asked about the what's the difference between the GAPS diet and the paleo diet? Not paleo, what was it? Keto. That was the question. I meant to try to look into that for you because she sent me that question before, but I didn't have time. But basically what I think it is, because I don't know much about the keto, I know that the keto diet came out after the GAPS diet. And so the keto diet, which is what the GAPS diet is, it's a ketogenic diet, because basically it is removing all the offensive foods, which is starches. So you're going to take out all legumes and grains and potatoes. I think yams, sweet potatoes, those things, they're really high starch foods. So wheat, gluten, right? And at first, I remember one time I looked back over the few days and I was like, geez, that's all I ate was carbs. Not even carbs, but it was those starchy carbs. for days on end. And this was back when I was not feeling great. And I am so glad for the GAPS diet. So it's taking out those offensive foods, because all those things turn into sugar really fast in your body. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to nourish the bodies. Those foods don't generally have a lot of nourishment in them. They do have some, but you can get that stuff from different foods really easily. So they're not really very nourishing. One of my teachers in acupuncture school told us that rice actually got popular in China when the overpopulation started happening, and they were trying to, and then they herded people into mass, living situations with the communist thing, and that they had to figure out how to feed a ton of people at once. And so then they brought in all these grains, and actually started having a lot of problems after that, health problems. So because a lot of traditional diets, they do have grains in them somewhat, but they're not like overly dependent on them. So the keto diet, what I think is the difference, because I have looked a tiny little bit into it in the past, but they don't put emphasis on really healing the gut. And that's what the GAPS diet does. It's very well thought out. It's very well tailored to have those healing foods for the gut in the diet, and they're mandatory parts of the diet, like the bone stock, beef, meat stock, and fermented foods, raw dairy products. And I'm pretty sure in the keto diet they don't really care about that, the raw versus pasteurized milk. So they don't look at that part of it. So the keto is just more like getting rid of those starches. That's what I know. And I will look into it for next time too. If I find more, I'll tell you about it. So the diet, so it's about the supplementation, the detoxing, and I don't think the keto diet either, they depend on that, removing those foods for the detoxing. And they don't have a step-by-step protocol on how to do it. And that's not to say that everybody has to do it in exactly the same way. And so this is another part that's different from the keto, is that, so as you go through, there's a lot of information on the GAPS diet. So you can even do it just online. If you go to that gaps.me, you could probably figure it all out. It's always nice to have someone else to help you through, at least maybe 1 or 2 appointments, like 1 at the beginning or 2 at the beginning, and then 1, maybe 3 or 6 or 10 months down the line, or if you have questions, that kind of thing. There are online forums also that are free, I think, through Facebook and stuff. But I'm not doing that. So, but you can find stuff. And so there's on that gaps.me website, there's a frequently asked questions section. Has a lot of information. You could just pretty much look anything up there and check it out. So and then you guys in the UK, you can check out that physio lifestyle, what does that say? Medicine personnel. I guess it's a new kind of nurse practitioner or something there that could help with that. And then let me see here. Where are we? Ooh, we're already at 3 o'clock my time. But I'm going to move on a little bit. If there's any more questions, just shoot them off to Vanessa there, and she'll send them to me. But I wanted to cover some other stuff about the toxins in our kitchen, right? So this is all part of the diet too. So that's different than the keto. They're not looking at your dishes or your cookware. Or the GAPS is looking at everything, like all that stuff I talked about last time about the shampoos and the body products. That's all part of the GAPS diet. So, and we'll go through more of that later, and also doing baths, detoxing baths and things like that. Laying in the sun is part of the diet. Going swimming in natural bodies of water as much as possible. That's part of the diet. So it's very well rounded, and there's a lot of really fun things about it too. And it's a great diet. It makes you feel so good. But, some people who are really, really, really sick, it's going to be a little harder, but it's possible. It's doable. So, okay, toxins in our dishes. So this is one of the things that came to me just like, I don't know, the last few years about dishes from China. So a lot of people, you can't afford stuff. You go to the thrift store and buy all this crap from China or to Walmart or whatever. That stuff, most of it has lead in it. So my recommendation is to go in and just get rid of that stuff. I don't know what the poor landfills and, oh man, this earth. So yeah, look for the stuff, your dishes. If you got just dishes from China, you probably want to get rid of it and find stuff that's either handmade or I guess probably in the U.S. maybe we have laws against that. I don't know. They're really supposedly we don't have lead in our dishware here. But stuff like there's glassware from France that a lot of people get, and we see them a lot in the thrift stores here. So if I ever see them, I buy them up and put them in my shop and just give them to people, or, let them have it for what I bought it for or something, so that I can get them off of toxic dishware. So, and another thing about the glassware, any kind of glass that you're using, if you use those in microwaves, you want to be really careful, because I've heard of people they all of a sudden they hear this crash in their kitchen and they go in the cupboard and one of their plates exploded. It's because they were using it in the microwave and it somehow, I don't know, the molecular something happened to it, and it just later on it exploded. So that's kind of weird. So microwaves, get rid of them. Let's see, silverware. Dang, one time they have silverware can be very toxic. I went into Walmart once and bought some silverware because I don't know, and I brought it home and it had all these nanoparticles on it, like this dust of silver stuff that stuck to my hand really bad. I tried to wash it off; it was getting all over everything. So I brought them back. But yeah, then I didn't really know about nanoparticles back then, but that's what it was. So just be aware of that. Go in and buy the old stuff from the thrift stores or yard sales, or if your grandma's, moving out or getting rid of her stuff, or your aunt or anybody, go in and look through their cookingware and their silverware and stuff, their glasses, and buy the old stuff, because usually it's better quality. If you see real tarnished things that turn black, that means that they had a layer of a different metal that was probably okay, and then over time it wore off, and then you're serving stuff with nickel, which is really toxic. But the older stuff and the really good quality, I've bought stuff from Germany or England and Denmark and different yard sales, and they just look really nice and sturdy, and I've used them a long time, and they're not tarnishing, they're not wearing down, and I think it's just because the whole thing was made with good metal rather than just a veneer of metal, and then underneath it's like this toxic stuff that you end up using if that's what you got. This Navajo jeweler told me about that. So let's see. So we'll talk a little bit about the garden. As you know, I kind of got a little sore throat yesterday. I almost canceled the show for today because I had a pretty bad sore throat yesterday and just a little bit of a headache. But I had some mullein or some sage, so I made sage and echinacea tea, and it kind of helped, but the sore throat was really bad. And then later on I put some mullein in there, which apparently is originally from the UK. And that really did it. It really helped that sore throat. So I think that combination of the sage and the mullein was pretty good. And, I don't do everything totally right. That was my fault. I left the house without a really warm jacket. It got warm. It warmed up one day it got like 70, and then the next day it looked like it was warm, but it wasn't, and I didn't put on enough clothes. And so that's why I got started to get sick. So it's that, make sure you have your hat and your coat. Even if you're not going to put it on, just take it with you. Because I got out of the house, I got halfway to work and was like, oh, shoot, I don't have enough clothes on. And I started, that sore throat creeped its way in. But I'm doing better today. So, one thing about that, too. So if you're starting to get sick and you got that swollen glands and stuff, don't rub your glands. Don't push on them or anything. Because those glands are, they're trying to filter out the toxins, right? The bacteria and stuff or whatever's going on. So if you rub them, you could release that and get way sicker. That happened to me once too. I actually went for there was this flu going around, and it was a really bad sore throat thing. And I had it for a long time, and then it started going away, and someone offered me a lymphatic massage. And I thought, well, maybe that'll help. Oh, God, I got so much worse. It was terrible. So now I'm just really careful about, if people are trying to get sick, don't rub those glands. And just drinking lots of water, flush it out, stay warm, and no chicken soup at the beginning, right? Because if I have a sore throat, that's really hot. And chicken is hot. In the nature, Chinese medicine, every food has a different nature to it. Like it could be hot or cold or neutral. Like turkey is really hot. They call it the firebird here. I think some native tribes used to call them that. And then chicken is hot also. So if you notice, when you eat chicken soup, you'll get warm right away. So that's because it's warming. It's a hot natured food. So if you have a cold, so usually the colds start off as a cold, like you feel cold. And that's what happened to me. I was driving to work. I was like, oh no, it's way colder than it was yesterday. And I didn't bring enough clothes. And I got out of the car. It was windy. It was like, oh my God, here I am getting on my patient's case for not wearing enough clothes. And I'm there with no jacket because it was cold. It was warm yesterday. So usually you'll feel it as that chill, the very first thing. The aversion to wind is the absolute first thing that you notice when you're starting to get sick. So the aversion to wind and then the cold. And so if you drink your ginger tea right away, you don't want to drink it later on when it's already the sore throat. If you drink it right away, it'll help push it out. And I did that. I made some ginger tea when I got home. I think it was a little bit too late because I didn't have ginger at work. But so it did develop into that sore throat because cold turns into heat, like the yin and the yang. You got the seed of the yin in the yang and the seed of the yang within the yin. And so it's constantly transforming everything like day into night, hot into cold. And so that's what happens with the flu. It starts with cold and then it turns to heat. And so for me, it went into my throat and I had a really bad sore throat. So instead of chicken soup, I made some beef soup. So I got a piece of kind of gelatinous. That's the kind I like because I got used to it on the GAPS diet. It's the more fatty cuts and it has so much more flavor and it's cheaper too. So I had some in the freezer and I took it out and made a little pot of stuff. I put it in the oven really low with some vegetables and lots of onions because onions are really good for the lungs and the mucous membrane. It's one of the first foods on the GAPS diet is really well-cooked onions. Because they have the onions, the cells, if you look at them in a microscope, they look almost exactly like the lungs or the mucous membrane cells. And so, like treats like, right? So those onions are really, really good for the throat, for the asthma. In Mexico, they put red onions and chop them up and put them in really good quality honey, and you soak them in there for a long time, and then they eat the honey like that or put it in tea, and that is really good for asthma and lung problems. So I made that beef broth or beef stock. Broth is when you cook it longer. in stock for GAPS people. When you're starting the GAPS diet, actually the meat stock that's made out of the joints with the meat, the gelatinous meat, that's a meat stock. So that's just boiled for not very long, maybe a couple hours or something. So sauerkraut juice in that, I put a little bit of that in. I drank some. That really helps the throat. It's got a lot of vitamin C. So that's really good for when you're getting sick too. So you want to kind of go towards the meat or the beef maybe, or vegetable broth with some sauerkraut juice and stuff. Pickle juice is really good. Also for kids, for stomach aches, that's a really good thing. And I did extra cod liver oil yesterday and today, and lots of fat. Like yesterday, I didn't feel like eating, so I was kind of hungry, so I got a piece of real sourdough bread, which is really soured. A lot of the breads that say sourdough, I think they're changing the laws on that, but here, for a long time, they were calling bread sourdough bread, but it wasn't really soured. It wasn't allowed to rise on its own. They were putting yeast in there and then adding vinegar to make it taste sour. So what the souring does is it breaks down the gluten and makes it more digestible. So that's why people have problems with a lot of breads. So I got a piece of real sourdough bread yesterday and I stuck a ton of butter on it, like probably a half an inch of butter over the whole thing. The crust and everything. I just had a big, huge slab of butter on there, and I ate that, and I felt so good afterwards. I mean, there's so many lies that we got told. I mean, I always feel guilty when I'm doing that. I get to hear my mom going, "Oh, you can have crackers or toast, but no butter because you're sick." And but I just do it anyway. I just try it out because that's what I heard. Really interesting stories about different traditional cultures where, like the Maasai, and somebody went to Africa and hung out with the Maasai people and talked to them about their diets. And she asked them, this one guy who grew up eating his traditional diet, but he was eating all kinds of junk, at the time. But she asked him, what did you do if people would get sick? And he goes, well, we go home and our parents, the elders would give us fat, animal fats. So ever since then, I've been playing around with that. If I do start to feel sick, I just eat a ton of, butter on something, or, when I got the broth out to make it, I took all the fat off of the top of it and put it in with what I was going to eat right now, so that I'd have a bunch of fat, and it helped. So anyway, that's my experiences with all that, and I don't know if there's any more questions. Let's see here. Thanks, you guys, for coming on into the chat room today. Appreciate it. So we got Angel there, Anjamez. We got the artist, and Kenny No Be Me, Crazy Fox, Karen, Lizzie, Gaz, Rachel, Red, Regis, Rob, Vanessa, and me. So thanks again for being on. Guys, have a wonderful night, and stay on the show if you want. You can hang out for Gaz's, I think it's Gaz's show tonight, or maybe it's Red's, the music show. It's really fun, and if you're in the chat room, you can chat around with people. It's kind of fun. So again, thanks again for coming, and we really appreciate you being with us here at People for People Radio. And check out the links for the other shows. There's so many amazing, thought-provoking shows. Okay, have a good night.